lawmakers are set to vote for a new Speaker of the House today as Congress starts its new term with a new Republican majority in the House. But it's unclear whether Republican leader Kevin McCarthy has the votes to avoid an historic loss. ABC News political director Rick Klein joins me live now. Rick, as you and I are speaking, there are Republicans on Capitol Hill talking about why it sounds like they don't plan to vote for Kevin McCarthy. So what does his path to speakership look like right now?
Yeah, Diane, if anything, we're hearing from more Republicans who say they won't vote for McCarthy. We just heard from Congresswoman Lauren Boebert, who has not been on either side of this. She says this is basically the Pelosi path in terms of these rules changes. So clearly what McCarthy's given so far is not going to be enough. When that vote commences in about an hour, there's no realistic way that he gets 218 votes, at least not on the first ballot. Then we enter some uncharted territory. It's been a century since we've seen more than one ballot for Speaker. There'll be a lot of horse trading, a lot of wheeling and dealing. But those members that you see on the right of your screen right now, they are very dug in right now and saying that they will not support Kevin McCarthy as House Speaker.
What is it they want? Do they want a specific compromise from McCarthy, or do they just want him to step aside, period?
Well, the biggest thing they're asking for is actually a way to make him not be Speaker anymore, if it should come to that. What they talk about, a motion to vacate the chair. That's basically a no confidence vote. Right now, Speaker wannabe McCarthy has said that he would agree to as few as 5 members at any given time banding together and demanding that there be a no confidence vote that would oust the House Speaker. They want, though, this group wants as few as 1. That is what famously brought down John Boehner as Speaker when then Congressman Mark Meadows, later the Trump chief of staff, entered in for that motion. It empowers any one member to potentially bring down a speakership. That's what McCarthy is trying to avoid. You also hear some talk about various rules around what kind of amendments can be offered, what kind of voice that individual members in the conference are given. These aren't really ideological splits. A lot of it has to do with the process, but underscoring that is the power that individual members, and particularly these members that are holdouts, want to be able to wield over a House Speaker. In their view, too many Republican House Speakers in the past have caved to Democrats, have negotiated away things that they feel like they should hold firm on. They know that this Congress is going to be filled with negotiations, given the fact that the Democrats continue to control the Senate and the White House, and they don't want a Speaker who's going to feel like he's got the power to cut deals without having basically all the Republicans on board.
And I want to go to Jay O'Brien on Capitol Hill for a little bit more on this. Jay, if this vote fails, what does that mean for the new Republican majority and for business in Washington in general?
Well, that's an excellent question, Diane. Firstly, if he loses on the first ballot, we go ballot after ballot after ballot until eventually there is a speaker. The longest was in the 1850s, 2 months, 133 ballots. The last time we went more than one ballot was 100 years ago, right in the 1920s. But what it means writ large in the Congress is it means that Kevin McCarthy, if he successfully gets taken down or even delayed by these 5 far-right Republicans, it puts him in a much more difficult position in terms of controlling the House GOP conference. I just caught up with James Comer, who's going to be the chair of the House Oversight Committee. He's the new incoming chair of that committee for the Republicans, poised to investigate the Biden administration, et cetera. And I asked him that exact question, is that if Kevin McCarthy does eventually become the speaker, but he has his position delayed, stalled by these 5 House Republicans, if not more, does that mean he's weakened? Comer said it doesn't. He also said it doesn't mean that there's going to be a lot of drama today. He is of the opinion that this will be wrapped up relatively quickly. But one of the things we're hearing from the other Republicans, the so-called Never McCarthy Republicans, is that they are prepared, despite overtures from McCarthy just made moments ago in a House GOP meeting. Those Republicans who oppose him are prepared to take this for as long as possible. McCarthy playing hardball in that meeting, aggressive towards members, saying that he's not going anywhere. From what I have heard from the Never McCarthy members who were in that meeting, that only served to embolden them, and we're going to see all of that dynamic play out on the floor just moments from now.
So, Rick, big picture, if someone's watching at home and they don't really care about Kevin McCarthy one way or the other, why does this matter?
Matters who the House Speaker is. You're talking about the person that's third in line for the presidency. It also matters for the way in which that new Speaker feels like he or she is able to wield power. Because we have divided control in Washington, it's going to be critical for a House Speaker to be able to sit in a room with the Senate Majority Leader and the President or someone from the White House staff and say, look, what do we have to do to get the budget done? What do we have to do to avoid a debt showdown? What do we have to do if there's a national security crisis of some sort? So the way that the majority installs a Speaker matters greatly. And we have have not had anything like this tumult at the top ranks of Congress. As Jay mentioned, it's been a century since you had a party having to go to a second ballot. We've also are now saying goodbye to the Nancy Pelosi era. For 20 years, she has been the Democratic leader. You're going to have new leadership atop the Democratic Party as well. And I think the question that the Republicans continue to grapple with of how to handle the MAGA era overhangs all of this. So much of it has to do with these splits in the party that have not been resolved.
And our congressional correspondent, Rachel Scott, was just at that very press conference. Rachel, at this point, given what you just heard, what does McCarthy have to do to make this happen?
Well, I think he has to meet some of these demands coming from some of those very conservative members that you just heard from in that press conference. They were just gathering at the mics right behind me. We're expecting Leader Kevin McCarthy to exit that room at any moment. Look, this meeting happened behind closed doors for more than an hour. I'm told that McCarthy gave a very fiery speech. He said that he is standing his ground. He is not going anywhere, he said, until he gets all the votes that he needs in order to become the next Speaker of the House. But that is not going to be easy, because just moments ago, Congresswoman Lauren Boebert, who was on the fence up until this point, said that she is now joining the 5 other conservative Republicans in opposing Kevin McCarthy for Speaker of the House. So now you got another person. That is in addition to the several other Republicans who have also said that they're on the fence. It does not appear that what McCarthy said in that room behind closed doors did very much to push some of these conservative members to support him. So he has a big problem on his hands at this point. They laid out their list of demands in terms of committee assignments. They want to see a plan for the border. They say that none of those at this point are met. And so Matt Gaetz told me that he's willing to drag this out for as long as it takes. He's warned that we could see cherry blossoms here in Washington, D.C. before we see the next Speaker of the House.
Oh, boy. Rachel, if not Kevin McCarthy, then who?
And that was the big question that we kept asking. So, of course, there is one challenger, Andy Biggs, but he doesn't have the 218 votes that would be needed. He has a small group of conservatives that are supporting him. So that is the big overarching question here. If it's not going to be Kevin McCarthy, then who else will it be? Of course, many people are bringing up Steve Scalise. This is the #2 in leadership right under Kevin McCarthy. We know that Scalise is obviously supporting McCarthy. We are told that he's not necessarily campaigning to be the next Speaker of the House at this point. But we have heard that some members could be open to supporting Scalise. So at this point, it's just too early to tell. I got to be honest with you. Many members leaving this meeting genuinely do not know where this goes from here. But everyone here is certainly just bracing for a very long night here on Capitol Hill.
And Rachel, I know Gaetz is saying that, you know, we could see cherry blossoms before we see the next Speaker of the House. But realistically, how long can they keep this going? Who has the leverage here?
I mean, they can keep it going for quite a while. And we just look back in history, a little history lesson here. I mean, the longest speaker battle, you go back to the 1800s. It took 2 months, 133 votes until they decided to elect a Speaker of the House. So they are able to drag this out for as long as it takes. We could see the House adjourn and then they come back into session. We'll see ballot after ballot, multiple rounds of voting. That's something that has not happened in a century. So this is really a once in a century fight that we are on the cusp of here on Capitol Hill. They have the power at this point with this razor-thin majority to drag it out for as long as it takes. I'm just turning behind. I'm just sorry, Diane. I'm just looking behind myself right now because we see Kevin McCarthy coming out. I'm going to try and grab him. Stand by here. Stay with us, Diane, here.
What about that guy?
He's coming to the cameras, Diane.
We did have an intense conference, and it's intense for a purpose. We have worked for a long time. I've been leader for 4 years. I came into this position, and we had less than 200 members. We are now sitting in the majority. We put forth to the American public a commitment to America. There's times we're going to have to argue with our own members if they're looking at for only positions for themselves, not for the country. For the last 2 months, we worked together as a whole conference to develop rules that empower all members. But we're not empowering certain members over others. Last night I was presented the only way to have 218 votes if I provided certain members with certain positions, certain gavels, to take over church committee, to have certain budgets. And they even came to the position where one, Matt Gaetz, said, I don't care if we go to plurality and we elect Hakeem Jeffries and it hurts the new frontline members not to get reelected. Well, That's not about America, and I will always fight to put the American people first, not a few individuals that want something for themselves. So we may have a battle on the floor, but the battle is for the conference and the country, and that's fine with me.
What do you think the battle is for the conference and the country?
Yeah.
The problem is that you have a math problem. You just can't get there. So what do you do on the 10th vote, the 30th vote, the 50th vote, if it just doesn't move?
Look, I have the record for the longest speech ever on the floor. I don't have a problem getting a record for the most votes for Speaker,
you think
too.
That'll move them
Thank
in
you all.
direction, though?
Well, I don't see how a few people, maybe it's 5, maybe it's 20, sit because they want a gavel that they can't earn by the conference of themselves. That would be interesting to me. That's not what the constituents voted them for.
What do you think is the first impression of a Republican majority for Americans? Unify the conference after this.
All right, we just heard it there from former House Speaker Kevin McCarthy, hoping to be the new House Speaker, but facing quite a challenge in his party. I want to bring back our political director, Rick Klein, for a little bit more on this. Rick, we heard McCarthy saying there that he has always worked to empower his members, the Republicans in the House, but not to empower certain members over other, implying there and almost explicitly saying that these members that we just heard from that say they will not vote for McCarthy are essentially looking for an unfair leg up in exchange for their vote.
Yeah, Diane, that was extraordinary. And he's never been House Speaker. He wants to be House Speaker. He's the Republican leader. And now for him to call out his fellow members and say that they're essentially being selfish. They're looking to cut side deals. They're looking to get special treatment, to be treated differently than their colleagues. That is an extraordinary public display of the infighting that has dominated the Republican Party, frankly, for the better part of the last decade. The tumult in the leadership today. And McCarthy now to say flatly that he doesn't mind if they vote for days, weeks, even months, set new records around that. That is a wild thing for the new Congress to present itself with. A concession there from McCarthy that he does not now have the votes.
And Rachel, what do you make of this? I mean, you've talked a little bit throughout the morning of the history here, but to hear Kevin McCarthy now say, you know, I have set the record for the longest speech on the House, and I think he misspoke slightly by saying the longer, you know, he can set the record for the most votes, but I think he meant the longest it will take for him to get those votes.
Yeah, Kevin McCarthy is making it clear he's really not going anywhere. He is in for this battle. He is in for this fight as long as it takes. If that's hours, if that's days, if that's multiple ballots, if that's breaking historic records. You heard him just now. He says that he believes that he can pull this out. I mean, the question is, at this point, how exactly does he do it? I mean, does he meet some of these demands, give more concessions? He's already made some pretty major concessions, including making it easier to possibly remove him as Speaker if he were to be elected. So at this point, it's just a big question mark. I mean, the speakership, the Speaker's gavel, now hanging in the balance on the first day of the new Congress. It's opening with chaos and so much uncertainty.
That's right. It looks like it will be a long night, potentially a long day and night for Republicans. And I know for you too, Rachel, Rick Klein, Rachel Scott, and Jay O'Brien. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.